call that ended my 12-year career came while I was teaching my son to fish. "Kevin, where the hell are you?" Ryan Walsh's voice cracked through my phone speaker like a whip, shattering the morning calm of the Alaskan wilderness. "My name's Kevin Hudson. I'm 48, and until that moment, I was the senior operations engineer at Wilson Manufacturing in Chicago. The guy who kept their production lines running when everyone else was scratching their heads. But Ryan Walsh, my 35-year-old MBA boss, was about to change all that. Alaska. On approved leave, I said, keeping my voice steady. My 19-year-old son, Justin, looked up from where he was practicing his cast, concern already creeping across his face. "You signed off on it yourself, Ryan. Well, I'm unapproving it. We need you back here immediately." I'd been dreading this moment for 2 weeks. Not the call itself, but what it represented. The fact that Wilson Manufacturing couldn't function for 5 days without me calling the shots. The fact that after 12 years of building their systems from the ground up, I was still treated like I was on call 24/7. This trip was supposed to be different. After my wife Sarah passed 2 years ago, I'd thrown myself even deeper into work. It was easier than dealing with the empty house, the quiet dinners, the way Justin tried so hard to fill the spaces his mother used to occupy. But watching my kid struggle through his senior year while I disappeared into conference rooms and emergency repairs, I realized something had to change. "What's the emergency, Ryan?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "The Henderson contract renewal is next week, and production line 3 is acting up again." I almost laughed. Line 3. The production sequence I'd completely rebuilt 6 months ago after their last cost-saving initiative nearly destroyed it. The system that hadn't had a single failure since I'd finished the redesign. Line 3 has been running perfectly. I ran diagnostics before I left. "What exactly is the problem?" "The problem is your attitude, Kevin." His voice was getting sharper now, that tone he used when he felt challenged in front of other people. "Real leaders don't abandon their responsibilities for fishing trips." Justin had stopped casting entirely now. He was watching me with those dark eyes he'd inherited from his mother, and I could see the recognition dawning. Here we go again. Dad's vacation getting interrupted by work. Dad choosing the company over his family, again. But this time felt different. Maybe it was the pristine morning air, or the fact that Justin and I had spent the last 3 days actually talking for the first time since the funeral. Maybe it was watching my son cast a perfect line just like I'd taught him, realizing he'd grown into a man while I was buried in operational reports. "Ryan, I've covered every emergency for 12 years. I've worked every holiday you needed me, every weekend crisis, every middle-of-the-night system failure. This is my first real vacation since when? Since you started making excuses?" He cut me off like he always did. "You know what, Kevin? I think it's time we found someone with more commitment, someone who understands what leadership actually means." The words hung in the air between us. Justin was staring at me now, his fishing rod forgotten in his hands. In that moment, I realized he was witnessing something that would define how he saw his father for the rest of his life. Was I the guy who took the abuse? Who crawled back, apologizing? Or was I someone who finally stood up for himself? "Are you firing me, Ryan? Consider this your termination. Effective immediately." The line went dead. I stared at the phone for maybe 30 seconds, watching the signal bars flicker in the wilderness. The strangest thing was, I didn't feel what I expected to feel. No panic, no crushing weight in my chest, just a weird sense of lightness, like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally let it out. "Dad?" Justin's voice was quiet, careful. "What just happened?" "I just got fired, son." "For taking vacation?" "For taking vacation." He set down his rod completely and turned to face me. "That's insane. You basically run that place." And there it was. My 19-year-old kid could see what I'd been too loyal, too trapped in routine to admit. I wasn't just an employee at Wilson Manufacturing. I was the backbone holding their entire operation together. The radio crackled from our guide's boat downstream. "Best salmon run in 15 years, the weatherman was saying. "Perfect conditions all week." Perfect conditions. Yeah, right. I looked at Justin. Really looked at him. When had he gotten so tall? When had those shoulders gotten so broad? He looked like his mother around the eyes, but his jawline was pure Hudson stubbornness. The same stubborn streak that had kept me at Wilson Manufacturing for 12 years, fixing other people's mistakes and accepting other people's credit. You know what, Justin? Let's keep fishing. But Dad, don't you need to? No. I powered off the phone and slipped it into my tackle box. For the first time in 12 years, what happens at Wilson Manufacturing is not my problem. He grinned then, that smile that reminded me exactly why I'd wanted this time with him in the first place. Good, because I was about to show you how it's really done. For the next 2 hours, we fished. Really fished. No phone calls, no emergencies, no production line 3 acting up. Just my son teaching me a technique he'd learned on YouTube, both of us laughing when I managed to tangle my line in a tree branch. It wasn't until we headed back to the lodge for lunch that the magnitude of what had happened started sinking in. Not just the firing, but the timing. The Henderson contract was worth over $50 million to Wilson Manufacturing. Production Line 3 was the heart of their ability to deliver on that contract, and Ryan Walsh, in his infinite MBA wisdom, had just fired the only person who completely understood how that system worked. My phone buzzed with a text notification when I turned it back on to check the time. Jennifer Park. Kevin, please tell me Ryan didn't actually fire you. Line 3 shut down completely 20 minutes after he hung up with you. Eric tried to restart the sequence and crashed the entire quality control system. The Henderson people are scheduled to tour the facility tomorrow. What do I tell them? I showed the message to Justin. Oh man, he said, reading over my shoulder. They're screwed, aren't they? Completely. Good. He said it with such conviction that I actually laughed out loud. That's my boy. That afternoon, sitting on the lodge porch with a beer and my son, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Peace. For the first time since Sarah died, I wasn't carrying the weight of everyone else's problems. Wilson Manufacturing was burning down, and it wasn't my fire to put out. Justin was right. They were screwed, and for the first time in my career, that wasn't my problem to solve. We flew back to Chicago 2 days later. Justin insisted we finish out the fishing trip, and honestly, I needed those extra 48 hours to wrap my head around what came next. 12 years at one company. 12 years of building systems, training people, solving problems that shouldn't have been problems in the first place. The kid was smart about it too. Dad, he said as we packed our gear, you've been talking about work differently these last 2 days. How so? Like you're not responsible for fixing everything anymore. Like you remember you're actually good at what you do. Sometimes I forgot how much he'd been watching. How much he'd absorbed during those quiet dinners after his mom died, when I'd come home frustrated and worn down, and he'd just listen while I vented about Ryan's latest brilliant cost-cutting initiative. The flight back was rough. Not the turbulence, but the 47 missed calls and endless stream of text, messages that started flooding in the second we hit cellular range over Minnesota. Jennifer Park, Kevin, they moved the Henderson tour up to today. Ryan tried to give it himself. It was a disaster. They're asking specifically for you. Carl Rodriguez. Brother, word's getting around. Ryan's been making calls trying to explain why their best engineer is suddenly gone. People are asking questions. Eric Miller. Mr. Hudson, I'm sorry to bother you, but I can't figure out the calibration sequence for Line 3. I've been trying for 6 hours. The Henderson people were not impressed with the downtime. That last one got to me. Eric was a good kid, maybe 25 years old, fresh engineering degree from Northwestern. Smart as hell, but green as grass. I'd been mentoring him for the past year, teaching him the real-world stuff they don't cover in textbooks. He didn't deserve to get thrown under the bus because Ryan needed someone to blame. I texted him back. Eric, this isn't your fault. The calibration specs are in my desk, bottom drawer, red folder marked Line 3 Emergency Protocols. You've got the skills. Don't let them make you think you don't. Justin was reading over my shoulder. You're still helping them? I'm helping Eric. There's a difference. By the time we landed at O'Hare, the situation had gone from bad to catastrophic. Jennifer called me directly while we were waiting for our bags. Kevin, I probably shouldn't be calling you, but you need to know what's happening here. Hit me. The Henderson contract team left early, wouldn't even finish the facility tour. Ryan's been in damage control mode all day, calling everyone he can think of to try and fix this. And he's been telling people you sabotaged the systems before you left, that you deliberately created instability to hurt the company. I felt my jaw clench. Justin noticed and raised an eyebrow. He's blaming me for his incompetence? It gets worse. He called a meeting with the department heads this morning, told them you were unreliable and had been coasting for months, said the company would be better off without your outdated methods. Outdated methods. I almost laughed. The same methods that kept his precious profit margins in the black for the last 5 years. Everyone knows it's garbage, Kevin. But he's the boss, so people are keeping their mouths shut. Except Carl Rodriguez. He told Ryan exactly what he thought of that theory. That made me smile. Carl had been at Wilson Manufacturing for 30 years, back when it was still a family-owned operation. Guy had been in manufacturing since I was in high school, and he didn't take garbage from anyone, MBA or not. What did Carl say? Something about Ryan not knowing the difference between operations and a balance sheet. It wasn't polite. We grabbed our bags and headed for the parking garage. Chicago felt different somehow. Colder, more industrial. Less like home than that lodge in Alaska had felt after just 3 days. My phone rang again while we were loading the truck. Unknown number, Kevin Hudson. Kevin, this is Stephen Cross from Pinnacle Industries. I knew the name immediately. Pinnacle was one of our biggest competitors, specializing in the same kind of high-precision manufacturing that Wilson did. Stephen Cross was legendary in the industry. Built his company from a small machine shop in the 1980s into a $200 million operation. Mr. Cross, what can I do for you? I heard about your situation with Wilson. Word travels fast in our business, especially when it involves someone with your reputation. My reputation. Funny thing was, I didn't even know I had one outside of Wilson's walls. I'm listening. I think we should meet. I have a proposition that might interest you. You free tomorrow evening? Justin was watching me with curiosity now. Even he could tell this was different from the usual work calls. Tomorrow works. Chicago Club, 7 p.m. I think you'll find the conversation worthwhile. After he hung up, Justin grinned at me. That sounded promising? Maybe. We'll see. That night, I sat in my kitchen going through 2 weeks of mail and trying to process everything that had happened. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that reminded you exactly who wasn't coming home anymore. Justin ordered pizza and we talked about everything except work. College plans, his engineering program, whether he wanted to stay in Chicago after graduation, normal father-son stuff that we'd somehow forgotten how to do over the past 2 years. But around 10 p.m., the work drama found us anyway. Carl Rodriguez knocked on my back door, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past week. Kevin, sorry to bother you so late. Come on in, Carl. You look like you could use a beer. He sat down heavily at my kitchen table. It's worse than Jennifer told you. Much worse. How much worse? Ryan's been making calls all day, trying to do damage control with clients, but instead of fixing anything, he's been telling people that Wilson's operations are transitioning to a more modern approach. Translation, he doesn't have a clue how anything actually works. I poured him a Budweiser and sat down across from him. 3 more clients called today asking if you were still managing their accounts. When they found out you were gone, 2 of them asked about early contract terminations. Jesus, it gets better. Ryan scheduled an all-hands meeting for tomorrow morning, supposedly to clarify the transition and address concerns about operational continuity. I heard through the grapevine that he's planning to announce Eric as your replacement. Eric, good kid, but he'd need at least 2 years of intensive training before he could handle what I'd been doing. And that was if Ryan actually let him learn, instead of just throwing him into crisis after crisis. Poor kid doesn't know what he's walking into. That's not the worst part, Carl continued. Henderson. Manufacturing isn't the only client asking questions. Morrison Steel, Pacific Logistics, even the smaller accounts, they're all wondering if Wilson can still deliver. Ryan's created a confidence crisis. Justin had been quietly listening from the living room, but now he came into the kitchen. Mr. Rodriguez, right? I remember you from the company picnic a couple years ago. That's right, Justin. You've grown up. How's college prep going? Good. But I've been hearing a lot about this whole situation. Sounds like my dad's old boss made a really stupid mistake. Carl chuckled. That's one way to put it. We talked for another hour, mostly Carl filling me in on the politics and finger-pointing happening at Wilson. But what stuck with me was something he said as he was leaving. Kevin, I've seen a lot of good engineers get pushed around in this business. Most of them take it because they think they don't have options. But you've got options, real ones. Use them. After he left, Justin and I cleaned up the pizza boxes and got ready for bed. but as I was turning off the lights, he stopped me. "Dad, tomorrow night when you meet with that CEO guy?" "Yeah? Remember what you told me on the river? About this being the first time in years you're not carrying everyone else's problems." "I remember." "Good. Because I've been watching you these last few days. You look like yourself again. Smart kid, too smart for his own good sometimes." The Chicago Club sits downtown like a piece of old-world class in a city that's constantly tearing itself down and building back up. I'd driven past it 1,000 times but never had reason to go inside. Walking through those brass doors felt like stepping into a different league entirely. Stephen Cross was waiting for me at a corner table, and I recognized him immediately from industry photos. Mid-60s, silver hair, the kind of presence that doesn't need to announce itself. He stood up when I approached. Firm handshake, direct eye contact. No games, no corporate theater. "Kevin, thanks for coming. I hope the day treated you better than yesterday." "Depends how you define better," I said, settling into the leather chair across from him. "Wilson Manufacturing is still burning down, but it's not my fire to put out anymore." He smiled at that. That's exactly the attitude I was hoping to hear. The waiter brought menus, but Stephen waved them off. "Order whatever you want, Kevin. We've got more important things to discuss than food." I appreciated the directness. After 12 years of Ryan's corporate doublespeak, straight talk was refreshing. "I'll cut to the chase," Stephen said. "Wilson just handed me their best engineer on a silver platter, and I'd be an idiot not to take advantage of that." "You've done your homework. I've been watching Wilson's operation for years. Everyone in the industry knows their success runs through one person. After yesterday's Henderson debacle, it's becoming obvious to their clients, too." The waiter returned and I ordered a steak. Stephen got the same. "Old school guys, old school choices. How much do you know about what happened with Henderson?" I asked. "Enough. My contact there called me this morning. Said the facility tour was a joke." Ryan Walsh tried to explain operational procedures he clearly didn't understand. When they asked technical questions about Line 3, he kept referring to legacy systems and outdated protocols. I felt my jaw tighten. Legacy systems. The same systems that had never failed, never missed a deadline, never produced substandard output in the 6 months since I'd rebuilt them. What did Henderson decide? They're reviewing their contract, looking at alternative suppliers. Stephen leaned back in his chair. Funny thing is, they're not just questioning Wilson's operational competence anymore. They're questioning their leadership judgment. Hard to trust a company that fires their most valuable asset out of ego. Our steaks arrived perfectly prepared. We ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Stephen got back to business. "Kevin, I'm not going to waste your time with recruitment theater. I need someone who can run complex manufacturing operations without hand-holding. Someone who understands that engineering isn't just about making things work. It's about making them work consistently, efficiently, and safely. And you think I'm that person. I know you are. The question is whether you're interested in stepping up to a role that matches what you've actually been doing for the last decade." He slid a folder across the table. "Clean, professional, no corporate branding nonsense. Just substance. Vice President of Operations," he said simply. "Full autonomy over production systems, quality control, and process optimization. Your own engineering team. Compensation that reflects what you actually bring to the table." I opened the folder. The numbers made me pause. Not just the salary, but the stock options, the benefits package, the respect built into every line of the offer. This is generous. It's appropriate. I don't believe in underpaying talent and wondering why they leave. My phone buzzed with a text message. Jennifer again. "Kevin, emergency meeting called for 6 p.m. Ryan's bringing in consultants to assess operational stability." Translation, he's panicking. I showed Stephen the message. He chuckled. "Consultants. When you don't know how your own operation works, I suppose that's the logical next step." Poor Jennifer. She's one of the good ones, stuck in the middle of this mess. What about Eric Miller, the young engineer? I was surprised he knew Eric's name. Good kid, smart, willing to learn. He'll be fine once he gets some real experience. But throwing him into my role right now is like asking a med student to perform brain surgery. Agreed. Which brings me to my next point. Stephen leaned forward. Henderson Manufacturing isn't the only client questioning Wilson's stability. Morrison Steel called me yesterday. Pacific Logistics reached out this morning. They're all wondering if Pinnacle might be interested in taking on some new contracts. And are you? Depends. Do I have the operational leadership to handle that kind of expansion? I saw where this was going. You want me to help you steal Wilson's clients? I want you to help me serve clients who need reliable manufacturing partners. If those clients happen to be leaving Wilson because they can't trust their operational competence, that's not stealing. That's business. He had a point. In manufacturing, reputation is everything. Clients don't care about corporate politics or MBA theories. They care about delivery dates, quality standards, and operational reliability. If Wilson couldn't provide that anymore, their clients would find someone who could. My phone rang. Carl Rodriguez. Sorry, Stephen. I should take this. Kevin, you need to know what just happened at the emergency meeting. Hit me. Ryan brought in 3 consultants from some downtown firm. Cost the company $15,000 for a 4-hour assessment. Want to know their recommendation? I'm afraid to ask. They suggested Wilson hire an experienced operations executive to stabilize the manufacturing processes. Basically, they told him to find another you. I almost laughed. How'd Ryan take that? About as well as you'd expect. Started ranting about how the company needed to move forward, not backward. How hiring someone with similar experience would just recreate the same problems. What problems? We haven't had a major failure in 2 years. That's what Jennifer asked. Ryan told her that reliability could become complacency, and that Wilson needed dynamic operational leadership. Stephen was listening to my side of the conversation with obvious amusement. Carl, I'll call you back later. Thanks for the update. Dynamic operational leadership, Stephen repeated after I hung up. That's a new one. Ryan's always been creative with language. It's one of his few talents. Well, while he's being creative, his clients are being practical. Morrison Steel wants to meet with me next week. They have a $30 million contract coming up for renewal. Asked specifically if Pinnacle had the operational expertise to handle their requirements. I understood the implications immediately. Morrison was one of Wilson's oldest clients. If they jumped ship, it would trigger a domino effect that could destroy the company. Stephen, I appreciate the offer. I really do. But I need to ask you something straight. Shoot. Are you hiring me to run your operations, or are you hiring me to get revenge on Ryan Walsh? He considered the question seriously. Fair question. Answer is both and neither. I'm hiring you because Pinnacle needs someone with your skills and experience. The fact that it hurts Wilson is just a bonus. But Kevin, here's the thing. Ryan Walsh destroyed his own company the moment he fired you. I'm just taking advantage of the opportunity he created. That night, I drove home through familiar streets that somehow felt different. Chicago looked the same, but I was seeing it through different eyes. For the first time in 12 years, I wasn't thinking about emergency calls or production schedules or fixing other people's mistakes. I was thinking about possibilities. Justin was waiting up for me when I got home, textbooks spread across the kitchen table. How'd it go, Dad? Good. Really good. I sat down across from him. How do you feel about your old man becoming a vice president? His face lit up. Seriously? Seriously. Pinnacle Industries. Stephen Cross offered me VP of Operations. That's awesome! When do you start? I haven't accepted yet. Wanted to talk it through with you first. He looked puzzled. Why wouldn't you take it? Good question. A week ago, I might have worried about loyalty to Wilson, about leaving my colleagues in a bad spot, about whether I deserved a shot at the big leagues. But sitting there looking at my son, seeing the pride in his eyes, I realized those concerns belonged to the old Kevin Hudson, the one who accepted disrespect because he thought loyalty was more important than self-worth. You're right, I said. I'm taking it. Good. Because I was getting tired of watching you settle for less than you're worth. Smart kid. Way too smart for his own good. I started at Pinnacle Industries on a Monday morning in September. Walking into that building felt like stepping into a different world. Clean lines, actual windows in the engineering department, and a production floor where people moved with purpose instead of panic. Stephen Cross met me at the front desk personally. No corporate theater, no HR orientation nonsense, just a handshake and a simple introduction to the team. Folks, this is Kevin Hudson, our new VP of Operations. Kevin built some of the most reliable manufacturing systems in Chicago over the past 12 years. Now he's going to help us build better ones. That was it. No speeches about synergy or paradigm shifts. Just respect and clear expectations. I could get used to this. The first week was pure discovery. Stephen gave me complete access to their operations, financials, client contracts, everything. It was like Christmas morning for an engineer. Here was a company that actually wanted me to understand how everything worked, not just fix whatever was broken. But the real entertainment was watching Wilson Manufacturing implode in real time. Carl Rodriguez kept me updated with almost daily phone calls. "You're not going to believe this," he told me Wednesday afternoon. "Ryan hired 2 more consultants. Different firm, same recommendation. Hire someone with your background and experience." "How's Eric holding up?" "Poor kid's drowning. Ryan's got him working 80-hour weeks trying to manage systems he doesn't understand yet. 3 more production delays this week." Henderson officially terminated their contract yesterday. Henderson, the $50 million contract that had triggered this entire mess. I felt bad for Eric, but not surprised. You can't replace 12 years of experience with good intentions and overtime. What about Morrison Steel? Funny you should ask. They called Stephen Cross directly this morning, scheduled a meeting for Friday. That meeting went exactly as expected. Morrison's procurement director was blunt. "Wilson Manufacturing can't deliver consistent quality anymore. We need a partner who can." I spent 2 hours walking them through Pinnacle's capabilities, explaining our quality control processes, our delivery timelines, our backup systems. Everything I'd wished I could do at Wilson, but never had the authority to implement. They signed a $30 million contract the following Monday. Jennifer Park called me that night. "Kevin, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Morrison was Wilson's biggest account. Ryan's in full damage control mode, trying to figure out how to explain a 60% revenue drop to the board." 60%? Henderson, Morrison, plus 3 smaller clients who left after hearing about the operational problems. Word spreads fast in this industry. It spreads even faster when you're the guy everyone turns to for the real story. Pacific Logistics was next, then Westfield Manufacturing, then 2 smaller clients I'd worked with directly for years. Each meeting was the same. They needed operational reliability, consistent quality, and leadership they could trust. Everything Wilson used to provide when I was there to make it happen. By October, Pinnacle had picked up 7 new contracts worth over $120 million. All former Wilson clients, all specifically requesting my oversight. Stephen called me into his office on a Friday afternoon 6 weeks after I'd started. "Kevin, I've been in this business for 40 years. I've never seen anything like what you've accomplished here. It's not magic, Stephen. It's just knowing how manufacturing actually works instead of how business school says it should work." "That's exactly what I mean. You've increased our capacity by 40%, improved our quality metrics across the board, and we've landed more new business in 6 weeks than we typically see in a year." He slid an envelope across his desk. The board wanted to show their appreciation. Inside was a stock options agreement, significant stock options, the kind that made you a real partner, not just an employee. "Stephen, this is generous. It's appropriate. Partners get treated like partners." That evening, Justin and I went out for dinner at a nice steakhouse downtown. His idea. Said he wanted to celebrate his dad's success properly. "You know what's funny?" he said over appetizers. "You look completely different now." "Different how?" "Confident. Like, you remember you're actually good at what you do. Mom would be proud." That hit me harder than I expected. Sarah had always believed in me more than I believed in myself. She'd spent years telling me I was worth more than Wilson was paying me, more than they were recognizing, more than I was demanding. I'd always figured she was just being supportive. Turns out she was being accurate. She would have liked Stephen Cross, I said. No nonsense, straight shooter. She would have liked seeing you stand up for yourself more. Smart kid, always cutting right to the heart of things. My phone buzzed with a text message. Carl Rodriguez again. "Kevin, thought you should know. The Wilson board held an emergency meeting today. Ryan Walsh was relieved of his duties effective immediately. They brought in an interim CEO to try and salvage what's left." I showed the message to Justin. "Good," he said without hesitation. Guy had it coming. The interim CEO called me 2 days later. I recognized the voice. Bill Morrison, the former operations director who'd left Wilson 3 years ago for a better opportunity. "Kevin, this is awkward, but I need to ask. Any chance you'd consider coming back? We can offer you Ryan's position, full executive authority, whatever compensation you want." I almost laughed. "Bill, you know I respect you. But Wilson Manufacturing fired me for taking my first vacation in 12 years. I'm not interested in going back to fix their mistakes." "I understand." Had to ask. "For what it's worth, everyone here knows Ryan screwed up. You deserved better. I got better. Just not from Wilson." That conversation felt like closing a chapter. The old Kevin Hudson might have been tempted by the executive title, the chance to prove himself to people who'd never respected him anyway. But the new Kevin Hudson understood something more important. Respect isn't something you earn from people who don't value you. It's something you find with people who do. 3 months later, Pinnacle announced the largest contract in company history, a $200 million deal with the Department of Defense. Advanced manufacturing systems for military applications, the kind of high-precision work that required exactly the operational expertise I'd been building for 15 years. Justin drove down from Northwestern for the announcement ceremony. Seeing him in the audience when Stephen introduced me to the press as the best manufacturing engineer in Chicago was worth more than any paycheck. Afterwards, we grabbed burgers at the same place we'd gone after fishing trips when he was younger. Dad, remember what you told me in Alaska? About this being the first time in years you weren't carrying everyone else's problems? I remember. Well, now you're carrying your own problems, and solving them, and getting paid what you're worth for doing it, and spending time with my son without checking my phone every 5 minutes. That too. We drove home through the same Chicago streets, but everything looked different now. Not because the city had changed, but because I had. For the first time since Sarah died, I wasn't just surviving. I wasn't just getting through each day and hoping the next one would be easier. I was building something. Not just manufacturing systems or production processes, but a career that matched my abilities, a life that reflected my worth, a relationship with my son that wasn't competing with emergency phone calls and weekend crises. Wilson Manufacturing filed for bankruptcy protection 6 months later. The interim CEO couldn't stabilize operations without the institutional knowledge that had walked out the door when Ryan fired me. Most of the good people found jobs elsewhere. Eric Miller ended up at a smaller firm where he could actually learn instead of just fighting fires. Jennifer Park? She became my director of project management at Pinnacle. Turned out Stephen was right about needing experienced managers for our expansion. Carl Rodriguez retired at 60 with a full pension, bought a cabin in Wisconsin, and spends his days fishing. Sends me pictures occasionally of the ones that didn't get away. As for Ryan Walsh, last I heard he was working for a logistics company in Cleveland. Management role, not operations. Probably better suited to his skill set. The best salmon run in 15 years, they'd said on the radio that morning in Alaska. Perfect conditions. They were right. Just not about the fishing. Sometimes perfect conditions aren't about what's happening around you. They're about finally having the courage to change what's happening to you. Justin graduated from Northwestern last month with a mechanical engineering degree. Summa cum laude. He starts at Pinnacle in the fall, entry-level engineer position. Says he wants to learn the business from the ground up, the right way. Smart kid, just like his mother, and just like his old man, when he finally figured out what he was worth. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing that could have happened, because it forces you to stop settling for less than you're worth and start demanding the respect you've earned. Real loyalty isn't about how much abuse you can take from people who don't value you. It's about being loyal enough to yourself to walk away when staying means accepting disrespect as a way of life.